Welcome to the Big Apple School podcast. My name is Rico, and you are?
Amani.
And this is our special guest from?
Atlanta, Georgia.
Atlanta, Georgia. So, today we're going to talk about our guest, why she's here, where she came from, and why she's on this planet, I guess. I'm just kidding. So, Amani, what is your last name?
My last name is Edwards.
Okay, so Amani Edwards. Do people find that hard to pronounce in Russian?
Yes. Every time I tell them my last name, I have to replace the W with the V sound. But even still, it's confusing because they don't know if my name's Russian or English or whatever. So it's confusing no matter how I pronounce it.
So they don't say Edwards, they say Edwards.
Yes, definitely.
With the really hard R, Edwards.
I can't even say my last name anymore.
Really?
No, Edwards.
You're going to come back and say Edwards. They're going to be like, what? Who? Who's Vards? All right. So, why are you here?
I am here teaching English. I studied Russian for 3 years, but I'd never been to Russia. So after graduation, I saw an opportunity to come, and here I am.
Okay, cool. How long have you been here?
I've been here since September.
Been here since September. And you said that you studied Russian for 3 years, and you've been here since September. So can you say something, maybe just a few words in Russian? Say hello to our Russian listeners.
I could say hello, of course. Здравствуйте.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so здравствуйте всем from Amani Edwards. So, you said that you're from Georgia. So what's it like living in Georgia?
Georgia is the greatest state in the whole United States of America. And that's just not my opinion. That's everyone's opinion.
Everyone's opinion. Well, I'm not from Georgia. It's not my opinion.
Well, I'm just kidding. But Georgia is a great place to live. It's actually called the Empire State of the South. So New York is referred to the Empire State. Georgia is the Empire State of the South, which makes my home city, the capital of Georgia, Atlanta, the New York of the South. That's very true, considering that we have a large metropolitan area, a large economy, a huge GDP per capita. We have restaurants, museums, a lot of history, and also one of the largest and most busiest airports in the world, Hartsfield-Jackson.
Okay, cool. So you come from a pretty big city, and what was it like coming here? Was it a big change? Was it very different for you?
Coming to Novosibirsk wasn't that bad. The city, I believe, is around 3 million people, maybe a little less. But once I got used to the city, it was actually great. It's a big, small city. Like, Novosibirsk is huge, but you can pretty much find all the streets, all the shops and everything. So it's a very comfortable place to live. It's not like Atlanta, which is around 5 million people and continuing to grow. It's very hard to get from place to place. Here, you can get from goroda to the center on a good day without traffic in 45 minutes to an hour. Atlanta, on the other hand, it's probably going to take you an hour and a half to 2 hours.
On a good day?
Yes,
wow.
On a good day.
Wow.
Well, a bad day, but on a good day, maybe 45 minutes, which is still a long time. So,
okay.
I actually like it here. I enjoy it.
Okay, cool. So, have you experienced any culture shock?
The only culture shock I experienced the main one I experienced, shall I say, was with food. It's very hard to shop here, and I love to cook, but I can't find barbecue sauce or certain ketchup I like, or, different cheeses that I'm used to, such as cheddar. So I've had to get used to the food they have here and change up my cooking style, which has actually been very cool, I guess. I mean, my dishes taste the same, if not better.
Cool. It's funny that you said something about Novosibirsk being a big, small city, because there's actually something that people from Novosibirsk say, and they say Novosibirsk is a big village, because everybody knows each other or knows each other through another person or something like that. So they actually say, it's kind of like a catchphrase. They say Novosibirsk is a big village. So it's funny that you say that. Okay. How are you dealing with the temperature? I know that Atlanta is pretty humid, yeah?
Yeah, the temperature is terrible. I haven't met anyone, not only foreigners, but people actually from the city who have enjoyed the winter here. For those who were here in December when it hit negative 45, you know what I'm talking about. My worst experience was actually standing outside and waiting for the bus in negative 43 weather, and then getting on the bus and realize that it's warmer outside than it is on the bus. So my feet were actually freezing on the bus instead of on the street. So I'm glad that part of the weather is over here in the city, and we've actually entered spring. It may not look like spring, may not feel like spring, but it's much better than what we had 2 to 3 months ago.
Oh, yeah. I remember when it was about minus 45 and people were throwing boiling water out the window and it was turning into snow. It was pretty cool.
Wow.
It was pretty cool, but it was pretty scary at the same time. You realize that it's that cold outside. You could literally die if maybe you lose your keys or something and you're outside for too long. Yeah.
But it was great because if you had somewhere to go, there was no traffic.
Oh, yeah, because nobody wanted to go anywhere.
No one was outside.
Everyone was home, drinking hot chocolate and being warm, watching movies and stuff. So, did you tell your friends about how you survived minus 45-degree weather?
I haven't told any of my friends back home, but my friends here who are in different cities in Russia teaching English as well, they understand my plight in the negative 45 weather. Some of them didn't face as cold temperatures, maybe negative 38, negative 35, but still we all decided that this was too much for us, and maybe Siberia winter isn't where we need to be.
Okay, so if I'm not mistaken, in Atlanta it gets about plus 40 Celsius, maybe something like this. Yeah, so it's like 100 degrees Celsius difference almost.
Yes,
it's crazy.
Yes,
crazy.
It's wonderful though.
Tell me about your experience, because I also had a similar experience. When I came, I had never experienced such cold. So when I had to buy the cold weather jacket, I didn't know how to judge if it was warm enough or it was going to be cold. So luckily I had my now current wife. She said, get this one. And I was like, it's too big. It looks like I'm going to Antarctica. She was like, no, get this one. It'll work for you. What about you? When you had to buy clothes to come to Russia, how was it?
Well, actually, when I went coat shopping, I had my host help me, and she's been through the winters here before, so she knew which shops to take me to and which coats I should look at. So we went to about 2 shops on the left side, and I finally found a coat. And I kept asking her, I was like, is this warm enough? Is this warm enough? Is this warm enough? She goes, yes. I'm like, so even in the coldest temperature that Novosibirsk has, will it keep me warm? She goes, yes. I'm like, okay, I will buy this one. So I had an expert of the city help me purchase my jacket as well.
Cool. When I purchased my jacket, I was really happy because it was so big, so warm looking, and it was so cheap. It was like $60, so I was like, yeah, I got a good deal. It's a steal. And then I realized later why it was $60. All of the feathers that were in it come out, so all of my clothes are covered in feathers. Whenever I take off my jacket and I'm in class, my students look at me and they're like, you look like a chicken. I'm like, yeah, it's my jacket. So cool. At least you had some help, and that's kind of cool. What else was difficult to get used to besides the weather? Maybe the food or...
Yes, the food is interesting here. I found it hard to find some of the sauces I use, such as Worcestershire sauce. It's very hard to say. Even some Americans have a hard time saying that. Worcestershire sauce, barbecue sauce. I did find teriyaki sauce and hot sauce, though. So I am good with those two. Another thing that I've had to get used to is how seasonings are labeled here. So in the U.S., we have lemon pepper salt, but here it's called salt for fish. And so you have to know what the different seasonings look like in order to buy them, or else you'll think that they're just for fish or just for chicken or just for pork.
Ah, okay. Actually, I had the same problem, but I found barbecue sauce. Maybe I can help you with that later.
Where?
Yeah, it's like... what is it? Heinz, the ketchup company. They also make barbecue sauce, and it's here. So I'll give you the location later. But I need the Worcestershire sauce. If you know where it's at, I'm going and I'm getting it because I need it also. Okay, so for example, one of the things that I had trouble getting used to was the transportation. Not because it was bad or anything, but just because it was so different. Like you have to pay the person on the bus, and they're so packed. In Vegas, you never ever see a bus so packed like they are here. So that was one of the things for me. What about you?
I'd say transportation as well. I didn't take as much transportation in the U.S., but I will say that when I did ride it, you would walk to the front, drop your money off, and then walk to the back. And most likely you would be able to find a seat. Here, everyone's trying to sit down, but there aren't that many seats. But during the wintertime, for example, it's so cold, so the buses are so packed. I remember it was negative 30 outside, and I didn't want to stay outside anymore. It was too cold. So I just swallowed my pride and got on the most packed bus I'd ever been on in my life. It was absolutely terrible. And the conductor was still walking through the bus, collecting money from everyone.
They're crazy. They're magical. They're miracle workers, because I don't know how they can go through all of those 1,000 people on one tiny bus and they still just maneuver and go under people. They're like little wizards. I don't know. It's crazy.
And they get the money from everyone.
Yep.
Absolutely everyone.
Yep. So, one more thing. What is it that you do here for fun? How do you entertain yourself in Novosibirsk?
For fun, I know I've been to the opera theater twice since I've been here. I also met another American who's here teaching English, teaches how to teach English. And together we've been museum hopping for some Sundays. Most of it is also still just discovering the city. Just a few weeks ago, I finally made my way to the Central Market, which is absolutely wonderful. I'm going to go there again. I also like to go to restaurants. Since I cook 3 times a day, I really enjoy going out to eat and meeting with friends and enjoying their company and having someone else cook the meal instead of me. Besides that, I have a fast internet connection now, so I find myself watching a lot of movies in my spare time, specifically at night. I prefer to watch a movie and drink some tea and stay inside where it's warm.
Okay, cool. You mentioned that you drink tea. I wasn't a big tea drinker until I came here. Was it the same for you?
Yes, I maybe drank tea only when I was sick. And coming here, I drink tea every day. And I had to get used to it, because every time I go somewhere, people ask me, do you want tea or coffee? And I was like, oh, no, thank you, I'm fine. And they look at me, they're like, you don't want any tea? And I'm like, no, it's okay. I'll be fine. I just don't want any tea right now. So that was a huge thing for me. I talked to a lot of my students, and they asked me the same question. They're like, did you drink a lot of tea before you came here? And I go, no. One, because Americans are more coffee drinkers than tea drinkers. Mm-hmm. Not only that, but me personally, I just don't drink a lot of tea. I consider tea to be something I drink only when I'm sick, not just sitting around at home and pour myself a cup of tea.
Yeah. My brother likes to make fun of me because you, I'm sure, know that Americans always think tea and they think British people.
Yeah.
So whenever my brother sees me with a cup of tea, he always throws his British accent on. He's like, oh, would you like a cup of tea? And he likes to joke around and mess with me about that. So I asked you what you do here, but now I guess the listeners are probably more interested in what you do in Atlanta. What do you do in Atlanta for fun?
Atlanta, for fun, that's a great question, actually. One of the things I love to do is shop, and Atlanta is a great place to do that. We have Greenbrier Mall, Cumberland Mall, Arbor Mall, Lenox Square Mall, which is the biggest mall in the Southeast, and then we have Atlantic Station, which is an outdoor shopping center. So I'll just go shopping every day, get hungry, go to a nice restaurant, sit and eat. I also meet up with friends. We go to the movies, we go to parks, we go to see shows at the Fox Theater, places like that. There's also the Georgia Aquarium, which is the largest aquarium in the world. I actually just found this out. I didn't know that for sure, but it is the largest aquarium in the world. That is another great place to go. The World of Coca-Cola. Atlanta is also the home of Coca-Cola, so that's a great place to go as well. They give tours of the whole building, and toward the end, there's a room where you can taste every Coke flavor in the world. And so a lot of people stay in that room for like 30 minutes until they're tired of drinking soda, and then they leave. There's also the CNN Center, which is home, of course, to CNN. It has a lot of restaurants in there, and it's also connected to Phillips Arena, which is where the Atlanta Hawks play. Going into sports, we have 3 sports teams, the Atlanta Hawks, the Atlanta Falcons, and the Atlanta Braves. The Atlanta Falcons are a football team, and the Atlanta Braves are a baseball team. And the Atlanta Hawks, of course, are a basketball team. The Falcons are actually one of the top 10 football teams in the nation, and so a lot more Atlantans are going to see them. And I hope when I return to Atlanta, I can see them play as well. But those are just some of the things I like to do in the city. Another great thing is the restaurants. The Varsity, it's very greasy, very unhealthy fast food, but it is absolutely delicious. You have to eat at the Varsity. We also have restaurants such as This Is It, and Zaxby's. Zaxby's, I believe, is just mostly in the southern states, but it's a chicken fast food restaurants. Very good as well.
Cool. You mentioned about the aquarium. I know that SeaWorld was a pretty big aquarium too, but they're not only an aquarium, so I can understand why Atlanta Aquarium is like the biggest one in the world. So that's cool. I'll have to put it on my list of things to see. One thing that might be interesting for the listeners is that you guys have the Atlanta Hawks and the Atlanta Falcons. Is there some reason why you guys have birds or birds of prey as your mascots?
So it's interesting that you mentioned that. We also used to have a hockey team called the Atlanta Thrashers, but they were sold to a city in Canada a few years ago. So right now it's just the Hawks and the Falcons. I'm not for sure why we have birds of prey as our mascots. I would say that the Braves sort of cut off that trend we have because they're named after Native Americans, I believe. But the Hawks and the Falcons, I'm not for sure why we chose those two birds.
And the Thrashers mascot was also a bird of prey?
Yes.
Okay, that's interesting. Well, at least you guys have a team. We don't have a team in Vegas, so we're kind of losers, I guess.
Well, you all have a UFL team.
We do?
Yeah.
Interesting. Is it new?
It's a couple years old.
Interesting.
There are only 9 UFL teams, though. So.
Okay, yeah. So I guess it's like no one cares, right?
Yeah.
Okay, because I didn't know about it, and I've been there for part of those 9 years. So, okay, well, you told us how you entertain yourself. Tell us some interesting facts about your city, maybe.
Atlanta is one of the fastest growing metropolitan cities in the country of the United States. As I said before, Atlanta metropolitan area has a population of 5 million people, but the actual city is less than 500,000. So taking that into effect, don't go to Atlanta thinking it's small. Atlanta is huge. We are one of few cities that now has 4 area codes, not just 3. We have 4 now. Sadly, we don't have as great public transportation, but we have a very intricate system of highways and back roads as well. Atlanta is home to a lot of famous civil rights leaders and politicians. John Lewis, Ralph David Abernathy, Martin Luther King, one of the greatest civil rights activists of our time. He's from Atlanta. Atlanta is also home to, as I said before, one of the largest and busiest airports in the world, Hartsfield-Jackson, which has now built a new international terminal. So if you want to fly into Hartsfield-Jackson, it's great because it has international flights have their own section. So far as the arts, we have the High Museum of Art, which is a nationally acclaimed art museum. We also have the Fox Theater, which is one of the highest grossing theaters in the United States. And we have a museum dedicated to the Gone with the Wind book. If you are aware of that, Atlanta is the home to that book. So it's a lot of things, mostly historical, that makes Atlanta great and are interesting to see.
Okay, I'm sure a lot of students are curious. You said that your public transportation isn't as great. Well, what forms of public transportation do you have?
Well, we have taxis, buses, and we have a train. The only thing is the buses and the trains don't go to every part of the city. Not only that, but they are split by county. So Fulton County has a certain public transportation system. Then there's Cobb County, and they have their own public transportation. And then there's Gwinnett County, which has its own public transportation.
Then there's Gwinnett County.
Then there's Gwinnett County, which has its own public transportation. So it's very hard to get around the city if you don't have a car.
Well, how do you go from one county to the other, by public transportation?
Well, you'd have to it depends on which counties you're going to. So let's say you're going from Fulton County to Gwinnett County. So you'd have to take the MARTA, which is Metro Atlanta Rapid Transportation. Okay. So you take the MARTA to Cobb County. Then you get on the Cobb Community Transit System. Then you take that to the Gwinnett County Transit System.
So the Metro Transit System, it's not Metro like the students here think, right? It's not like a subway, is it?
No, it's just the Atlanta metropolitan area.
Yeah, so when she says the Metro Transport, she doesn't mean subway, guys. Just to clue you guys in. In the U.S., we say subway. You guys say Metro in Russia, and then other places say tube or underground and stuff like that. So when we say Metro, we mean metropolitan area. And she's talking about the metropolitan area transport. So, okay, cool. So, you were born and raised, yeah? You were born and raised in Atlanta. So, you love it, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, well, what about the neighbor places? Have you been to any other places, like maybe some other cities in Georgia or maybe some other states near Georgia?
I've been to Macon, Georgia, Savannah, Georgia, and Albany, Georgia. And then I've been to Florida. I've been to 2 cities in Florida. Actually, 3, I believe. Orlando, Sandestin, Boca Raton, places like that. I've not been to Miami. I would love to go there. I've also been to Alabama, just really Birmingham, Alabama. I've been to Tennessee. I've been to Chattanooga. I've been to South Carolina. I've been to New York, Boston, Ohio, Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, California.
You've been to a lot of places. Yeah. Okay, we got a traveler here. So one thing that I think might be a good question for our listeners, would you recommend Atlanta as maybe the first place that someone visits that's a foreigner? Maybe some Russian student wants to go to America and they want to go somewhere interesting. Would you say, oh, you have to go to Atlanta? Or would you say, oh, maybe make it your second or your third stop? What is your recommendations about foreigners coming to Atlanta?
Well, of course, I'd say you'd have to go to Atlanta. I absolutely love Atlanta. I still think it's one of the greatest cities of the United States. But I will say that it's hard to get around. And if you are not willing to take the time to get from one place to another using public transportation or possibly spending money on cabs, or if you can rent a car, then I would suggest you go to a city with better public transportation, such as New York, Boston, Los Angeles, places like that. But I do highly suggest that you visit Atlanta.
Okay. What do most people do in Atlanta? Like, well, you were studying, you said, and then you came here. But what do most people do? Like, is it, for example, in my city, most people work in casinos because that's all we have. But what about you? Is it really, really different? Or do people usually do one kind of thing? Or maybe there's a specialization that is in Atlanta or something like that?
Well, since Atlanta is growing so rapidly, there's large industry and construction. Of course, we have to build buildings, have to build new apartments, have to build new homes. But there's also businesses, Home Depot, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, CNN, things like that. So a lot of people are either in construction or business. We also have people who come to Atlanta and start their own businesses. There are a lot of people who move from Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, and they start up restaurants, for example, or they start up small businesses, small bakeries, things like that. So there are a lot of small businesses growing in Atlanta, mostly restaurants. Atlanta is trying to develop its nightlife. So if you have a restaurant idea or you have a club or a bar idea, it's most likely to succeed because people like places that they can hang out.
Okay, cool. One thing I forgot to mention earlier, the Coca-Cola thing, I'm jealous. We used to have this place in Vegas, it was called M&M World, and the top floor had a Coca-Cola tasting place, but they got rid of it. And then when you reminded me when you said that you guys have the Coca-Cola place where you can test all the Coca-Cola, I'm jealous. So guys, if you want to know, I know a lot of Russians ask me, does the Coca-Cola taste different in the United States? Well, if you go to Atlanta, you can taste all of the Coca-Cola, so that's kind of cool. Okay, I guess we'll finish it off. I don't want to keep you forever, but I want to ask you one final question. Maybe you have some advice for some of our Russian students that maybe want to visit Atlanta. What would be some tip maybe or some advice that you could give them?
I would say if you visit Atlanta, I would suggest that you stay in the center. By staying in the center, you're around all the sports facilities, all the high tourist places, all of the shopping restaurants. Not only that, but you're a bus ride away from Midtown and other places in the city, which are great to see. So I understand that staying in the center of a city, no matter where you are in the world, can be very expensive. But trust me, in Atlanta, it's worth it. Don't go for the cheap hotel out somewhere in another part. Go right to the center, stay there, and you can pretty much walk from place to place. Atlanta has great weather. Right now, I believe it's plus 10, plus 20. But if you go in the summertime, it'll be plus 40, plus 45. If that's too hot for you, go in May or April where it's not so hot. But that way you can walk around. You can just exit your hotel, walk around, and look at everything the great city of Atlanta has to offer.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, Amani. And maybe you would like to say something to our audience, maybe some final words.
Thank you for listening, and I hope to one day see you all in Atlanta.
Cool. Well, thank you guys for listening also. And this was Ricardo with the Big Apple School podcast and our special guest, Amani Edwards. So see you next time, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.